I could feel very high.
It's a new day, but not on the Enterprise. We're back on Earth and watching Detective Sykes from Alien Nation complain to Admiral Forrest Kelly about a certain monastery that just got kaboomed. I mean, okay, that monastery was secretly a spying station against the Andorians, and the Vulcans straight up lied about it, but Archer's the one who exposed their breach of a treaty, so that means he's to blame. To the Enterprise we go, where we find ourselves heading towards an inhabited planet. They're known to the Vulcans, but not to us, so we've arranged for introductions with the planetary leadership. Planning is interrupted by a call from Admiral Forrest Kelly, one where he shares news of the monastery/espionage center on JEM getting proper kaboomed. There's no loss of life as the Andorians allowed everybody to leave, but Admiral Forrest Kelly tells Archer that he needs to be more careful. He also shares more news, this time involving T'Pol. Archer brings her in after the call to let her know about the monastery and that the Vulcan High Command blames us. As a result, they're suspending joint operations with Starfleet and recalling T'Pol. A ship will retrieve her in a couple of days. He's fighting it, but she seems to be accepting the matter with quiet resignation. Perhaps changing her mind is part of the reason he decides to take her with him on our current away mission. That she's also a source of data on the place is a bonus, as Vulcans have been visiting for decades. She's clearly not as well informed as anticipated. An incoming contact turns out to not be an official greeting party, not unless these people greet visitors with guns anyway. We exchange coloured poop but get the raw end of the deal, and some kabooms, combined with a fade to black, suggest things have ended very poorly for us indeed. The good news is Archer and T'Pol have survived the landing. The bad news is they're tied up and bagged because they've been kidnapped. The head kidnapper arrives for a chat and is surprised to see a Vulcan subservient to any species, let alone one that he doesn't know. Archer tries to explain there's clearly been an oopsie as we were all invited, only for head kidnapper to say he doesn't recognize this government as they're puppets of the Vulcans. Perhaps this disagreement is why he's so interested in our weapons and our ship, though Archer's disinclined to share data on the latter point and gets a bonk on the noggin for his trouble. T'Pol uses his lack of response as the basis for a lie about Archer just being a steward and not knowing anything useful. The idea of T'Pol being the one in charge seems to fit head kidnapper's expectations a little better, and he leaves them be after concluding that she must be the captain. Back on the Enterprise, Tucker's calling the authorities. The leader we were supposed to be meeting explains they have a bit of a rebel problem, one that she didn't think worth mentioning because it's so small, and our people were kidnapped by them. She doesn't know where, as the attack happened outside of sensors, which seems a bit weird when we were over a settlement at the time, but let's ignore that for now. Either way, they're probably still alive for a ransom, and she'll definitely work very hard to locate them. Tucker's disinclined to wait and start searching on our end as well. Archer and T'Pol aren't waiting either. They're struggling to free themselves and talking about their situation at the same time. Not the kidnapping, but the matter of T'Pol being recalled. She's still trying to accept that she's responsible, despite Archer pointing out all the evidence to the contrary, and it's getting right on his tits. Speaking of which, a bit of falling over gives the writers an excuse to have T'Pol mashing hers into his face, but at least it also jars their bindings loose. Unfortunately, it coincides with someone turning up. Archer has a go at an escape attempt despite still having tied legs, and it probably would have succeeded if head kidnapper and a mate hadn't arrived as well. To the Enterprise again, where Reed's found the shuttle. Well, maybe. He's found some metal that matches it just outside of the city proper, though that whole area is covered with overpopulated makeshift housing. Perhaps our rebels have a point. Reed's arguing in favor of a scouting mission when they receive a phone call. It's from head kidnapper and he wants weapons. 40 of those fancy pistols should do the trick, or the captain and her underling are going to be on the business end of some unpleasantness. He hangs up before we can trace the call, or tell him that we don't have even half of the pistols he wants. Reed's more inclined to go in guns blazing now, only to be interrupted by another call. This one's from the Vulcan ship that's supposed to be picking up T'Pol. They're a day earlier than expected, and obviously not impressed to learn she's currently a hostage. As the situation involves a Vulcan, the captain states that he's taking charge. Tucker doesn't get a chance to argue the point, as he's already hung up. Tucker's having a chat with our Vulcan arrivals. Vulcan Captain is talking about making an armed assault as soon as they find the hostages, action intended to dissuade future kidnappings. That it may also get the hostages killed doesn't seem to matter, or maybe that's a bonus. Under the circumstances, Reed's idea to go and take a poke around might be the better option. Down on the planet, Archer and T'Pol's previous escape attempt has resulted in their kidnappers going full shibari on them. That makes it a little difficult to eat the food they're brought, which is probably just as well when some buggers put a flashing gizmo in it. Back to the Enterprise we go, where the Vulcan captain's giving us a call. He wants to know what the shuttle we've just launched is doing, but Hoshi pretends we're having problems with our phone because Tucker's not there to answer. That's because he's down on the surface with Reed to try and sort a rescue. It becomes one of the least successful plans Starfleet's ever had when they're immediately kidnapped as well. At least this kidnapping is slightly more friendly, as it's by none other than General Thylek the Blue, the lad who benefited from our interference at JEM. Rather unexpected, but he says he's here for a few reasons. One is that helping the rebels overthrow this corrupt regime would fuck over the Vulcans, as they have a mining agreement here. The other is that he owes Archer for what happened before, and he doesn't like debts. 2 birds with 1 stone. General Thylek the Blue even has a plant inside the base where Archer and T'Pol are being held, which is why he has maps along with details on how many guards are present. That last bit's not good news, as the count is 8, so Reed and Tucker offer to join in and make it slightly less unfair. The inside operative must be who smuggled the flashy gizmo into Archer's food, as it's a tiny phone. Tucker calls to update him on how things are currently going and tells him the inside man will come to untie them. Once that happens, they just need to get to the gate. The plan, presumably, was for Tucker to distract the gate guards with booze, while the plant lets in General Thylek the Blue and his mate. Whatever they thought was going to happen heads straight down the shitter when a guard hears them. Tucker manages to knock out the lad trying to hold him, while the Andorians throw 2 guards who went to investigate off the top of the wall. General Thylek the Blue opens the gate for Tucker and Reed, and the plan resumes once more, only to get kaboomed along with a section of wall. It would appear the Vulcans have arrived. The good news is that's enough of a distraction for our inside man to try and free Archer and T'Pol. The bad news is he takes a stray shot through the wall and carks it before he can do the job. Not to worry though, as Tucker and General Thylek the Blue are running in to have another go. The hostages are freed, and now all we have to do is get the bloody hell out of here. The Vulcans have a solution for that problem in the shape of a particularly potent weapon. The resulting kabooms take care of all the remaining defenders, which is handy. The Vulcans, realizing the Andorians are here, is a cause for harsh words and pointed guns, but they're not really in a position to take the high ground after the spying business. Besides, they all have more pressing matters when head kidnapper gets up and tries to shoot the Vulcan captain. T'Pol dives in front of him and takes the shot, while the Andorians poop green at head kidnapper and make him do a dead. Archer tells the Vulcan captain to go do one when he says they'll treat T'Pol, and the Enterprise crew return to the shuttle with her. The Vulcan captain is visiting our sick bay to check on T'Pol. That gives Archer a chance to plead her case, one that now falls on a somewhat more sympathetic ear due to saving the bastard's life. He doesn't promise anything, but says he might be able to have a word with Vulcan High Command about her recall order. Once he's gone, Phlox wakes T'Pol. Archer seems convinced now that the Vulcan captain will speak on her behalf and reverse her recall, so we'll leave T'Pol to recover as we get ready to take another step on the long road. Consequences. They're perhaps the thing I look for most in Trek, the thing so regularly pissed on by slamming the big red reset button, and the main reason I dislike time-fuckery stories, as they're often the largest offenders. Consequences are the very backbone of change within a universe, and a universe without change is a universe without stakes. The stakes of our actions at JEM have proven to be quite high. Not only has the installation been destroyed, along with the monastery it was using for cover, but it's had wider diplomatic consequences. The Vulcans are pissed off at us for a start. Rather than reflecting on their choices, they've decided to blame us for bringing those choices into the light of day. And this reaction from them gives us our first topic of thought for the episode. The Vulcans have previously shown how highly they value an approach of non-interference with other cultures. We've always assumed this was a matter of respect, a nod to the whole infinite diversity thing. But what if there's more to it? What if the Vulcans promote non-interference in the hope that other species will adopt it as well, and subsequently keep their noses out of dodgy Vulcan affairs? In fact, this whole episode paints the Vulcans in a particularly unfavourable light. As well as blaming us rather than reflect on their decision to break a treaty, we get a few other points. This is the first tacit admission that T'Pol's here as more than just an observer, for example. It's not particularly surprising that she'd be here to keep an eye on Vulcan interests, but what is surprising is how little data she was given while still being expected to protect them. How was she supposed to keep JEM out of our attention when she was unaware of its purpose? And what does that lack of preparation say about us? What opinion must the Vulcans hold of humanity if they believed a single science officer would have been able to control the entire ship's activities and the behaviours of all aboard? Is that simply a casual dismissal of us, or hubris on their part, or a mixture of both? None of those options reflect well on the Vulcans, nor does the choice to punish her for failing to cover their misdeeds. The situation on the planet we visit in today's story is hardly positive for the Vulcans either. Perhaps it's entirely innocent and the Vulcans really are impartial third parties who just happen to have a mining agreement, but the local rebels seem to think not. We can't be entirely sure either way, as it's also possible the Andorians are pushing the idea of Vulcans being puppeteers for this planet's government. Anything that stuffs the Vulcans is a win from their point of view. There is one possible hint in favour of the Vulcans being more than simple traders, though, the planetary government giving the Vulcan captain carte blanche in how to solve the hostage situation. Your average mining agreement does not generally give the signatory the freedom to conduct special forces raids in other sovereign territories. And speaking of that raid, there's a fair chance the death of the hostages was either an acceptable risk or a deliberate goal. The latter is a pretty solid result from their point of view, as we already have evidence that Archer's appointment was viewed unfavourably. If T'Pol happened to be killed at the same time, then, well, she'd already failed as far as the High Command were concerned. In fact, the death of a Vulcan during one of our away missions might even be useful to them. They could try to use it as proof that our reckless actions have repercussions for more than just humans, and use that point to push us back into our box. It might even be so useful that the strike team had orders to make sure of it. That would certainly tie into them taking their sweet time pacifying the defenders when they had weapons capable of doing the job in one, as proven at the end. Such a prolonged firefight would give any kidnappers ample time to make good their threats. Even the Vulcan captain deciding to try and help T'Pol at the end doesn't look good when you think about it. He's not doing it because it's ethical to fight an unfair judgment. He's doing it because he now owes her a debt. The decision is entirely personal rather than ideological. While we're on the topic of T'Pol in sickbay, we should probably talk about how Archer and Phlox bullshit the Vulcan captain. The seriousness of the injury is part of it, with the impression being given that it's far worse than it actually is. Phlox's choice of phrasing when asked about her chance for survival is a particularly nice touch. "I wish I could say" is not the same thing as "I don't know," and he shares a little look with Archer before answering. There's also possibly some misdirection from Archer as well. He launches into a speech about how T'Pol regularly pisses him off, which could be an attempt to portray her as someone who frequently disagrees with his actions, thus distancing her from the results of those actions. The idea that T'Pol was as much a victim of human impulsiveness as any other Vulcan would be an appealing one to his intended target. Plenty of things to think about from this episode then, and that's without even touching on General Thylek the Blue coming to the rescue. The story should probably be given some points just for managing to make the guy who beat the shit out of Archer last time be the most likeable guest star. He's not here just because Jeffrey Combs makes any story better, though. He's also here because his presence forms a counterpoint to the message of the story. We're shown that bad things are happening due to Archer's actions, that interference has negative results. But the very presence of General Thylek the Blue is also due to that interference, and without it, two of our main cast would likely have ended up dead. Funny things, those consequences. End of episode.
We should probably think about recruiting the comms officer, by the way.
Hoshi? She's not exactly a great choice for a fight, based on past performance.
No, but she's the one we have phoned to Starfleet. Might be wise to get her on side.
Fair point. What about Travis, the pilot?
He can't do much if we control the engines.
No, but he's a boomer and that's a wealth of experience. I'd be willing to bet he knows more about combat inside a ship than anyone else. A few dirty tricks might help even the score if the rank and file don't follow us.
Hey, that's not a bad idea. If it all goes pear-shaped, we could turn off the gravity.
You think that'll give Travis a chance to beat everybody else?
No, but I think it'll give us enough of a distraction to reach a shuttle. Oh.